Back for another episode, season 3, If It Be Your Will podcast, chugging along. We even had some great guests on this season, and today is no exception. This is the fusion of two amazing bands into a super band, I would say. We have Flowertown coming in from San Francisco, and I have Mike and Karina here to kind of share their collaboration, but also their perspective on their musical journey and how it's been going. And we'll talk about their latest record that came out just in February called Tourist Language. So, Flowertown, welcome.
Thank you.
As this podcast goes, we like to kind of get into your origin story a little bit. And what I mean by that is, when was music really starting to bubble to the surface as to your interest level in it as you were younger? Where did that musical thread start for you guys? Mike, why don't you get the ball rolling? Like, what are your earliest recollections of where music was something so profound and something that you really were going to need in your life as you grew up?
My parents always had music playing in the car and at home, but I think when it seemed, I think watching MTV as a child kind of opened a different door in my head and just added the visual side of things. That music videos, some are great, some are awful, but compelling in their own ways. So probably around like 9 years old, around there. And my dad used to play music in bands, and I ended up getting a used acoustic guitar around that time as well, and just messed around until eventually meeting people that also like to play music.
Right. And what were your earliest influences? Like, what bands did you really like to listen to when you were first picking up that guitar and feeling inspired?
Todd Rundgren was always playing at my parents' house. So I always, I have a soft spot for his music. But music that I discovered on my own probably started with, like Green Day or Marilyn Manson, Smashing Pumpkins, just on TV.
Much more of like a indie rock, bordering metal kind of sounds. Yeah. Like you like the aggressive, the in your face kind of alt rock.
Yeah, but I also like R&B of that era. Of course, love TLC.
Right.
Just good songwriting combined with something visually interesting has always worked well for me in terms of attracting my own interest.
Nice. Karina, what about for you? Where did it all start to spark for you?
It's a pretty different story. I didn't play music at all, or sing, or do anything performance related or sound related until I guess 8 years ago or so. I liked music like anybody does growing up. I guess my household was there was less music going on. My mom was too busy listening to music. And my dad's apartment, it was like really old blues and jazz mostly. So yeah, I think that my influences were probably very many. I had lots of friends as a teenager who were in bands and doing that kind of thing, but it never occurred to me to do that. And so I think I have tons of influences, but they're more like subconscious through osmosis. So yeah, I stumbled into it much later in life than most of my friends who play music.
And what do you attribute to the late start? Like, there must have been something was there a moment where things suddenly changed? Or like, tell us a little bit about that story of where it started to like, okay, I'm going to be in a band. I'm going to sing. I'm going to write music.
Yeah, well, I mean, of course, it's hard to know truly what causes what, but I moved into a house full of people who played music, and I found in the basement an old Squire Strat that somebody had abandoned there many years before. And yeah, I had learned a few chords. A previous partner had taught me a couple things, but I never did anything with it. And yeah, I think just I started learning some really simple pop songs, just realized that it wasn't that hard.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and started writing songs. One of my housemates at the time played drums and overheard me and offered to play with me, and yeah, things just kind of happened from there. So exactly why I don't know, but just finding that guitar was like the most obvious cause of a lifetime of never thinking about it, but I guess on some level wanting to do it.
Right, right. And have you both been right? Have you guys both been in the music scene most of your lives? Like, have you always kind of gravitated towards musicians and people that were creating music?
I had a terrible habit of dating them for most of my life, so yeah, I guess so.
Right, right. Mike, what about you? Like, what was your circles like? Your music circles like?
Um, in high school, it was, I was a loner in high school. Didn't have any friends at the schools I went to, but started meeting people at punk shows I would go to. And, started playing music with people that were also into that kind of music. And then at some point, I don't you just meet people over time. I think just going to shows and like friends of friends of friends. And San Francisco is pretty small. And I mean, the Bay Area is not that big in general, geographically. And, it's small town vibes in the sense that everybody knows or has a connection to somebody else, like within the music circles. As for having a terrible habit of dating musicians, maybe not so much, but the heart wants what the heart wants.
Well said. Well said. And Mike, this I don't know if I want to say transformation, but your inspirations and then looking at the sound that you now create, or I mean, I even went back and was listening to a lot of Tony J. And it's quite a difference between what you were growing up listening to and kind of that initial music. What was that voyage like to come to the more reflective, quieter, from having that kind of baggage from the past of Green Day and Smashing Pumpkins? What happened?
Well, I still have a lot of baggage, I'm sure, but I think I've always just. I think the way that I figured out how to write songs was just by trying to learn how to play other songs that I liked. So I think like having like a lot of like a foundation in just like pop of sorts helped me figure out how to write pop songs. And I think that the journey, like in terms of like the sound so much, I think I still write songs the same way generally, but every once in a while, like you have hair, you're cutting your hair differently or something, I just try to find a different way to dress it up, but underneath, I think it's still the same level of reflectiveness or obscurity if I don't have anything substantial to say. But just trying to mess around with sound and figure out how to make it sound different than the last thing I did, so I don't get bored, and hopefully listeners
Yeah.
get bored.
Well, I mean, your catalog, even adding on Flowertown, I mean, the catalog that you have, I mean, it's massive. I mean, you've written so many songs in your brief history, I'd say, because there's still a lot more to come. What's your writing process like that you pen so many tunes? Like what's your process like when you write a song?
I think maybe the process is like shifted a little bit, but I think getting a 4-track at some point in the last 15 years or so, just having like the tool there that's like waiting to be used. Like I would often find myself in the mood of wanting to record, but not having anything to record. And so I tried to change that by just recording, even if I didn't have like a song in my head that or anything worked out. Just so, like if you think about like drawing, you can just pick up a pen and start doodling. So I try to think about it in that way and not let not having an idea get in the way of recording something. Like once you start strumming the guitar or flicking and plucking the bass, whatever, then sometimes you'll end up with something that's not so bad. And then the lyrical side of things, just like they keep notebooks that are collections of ideas or just like dream fragments or whatever, just rhymes I think are interesting. So often I'll go and dig through the notebooks to find things as a jumping point to work with.
Cool.
So basically, nothing. Hopefully, end up with something
right.
that's
right. And Karina, what about your process? I'm very curious about the start of Cindy. I mean, I've been listening since the first release. I'm so happy that you guys are in two bands that I listened to before and then merged as this. We'll get to the merger. But pre-Flowertown, how did Cindy kind of get started, and how did you guys find the sound that you wanted to put forth on records?
Cindy started with me just writing a few songs on my own alone. Trying to think, like, I think Move to LA might have been one of the first songs I ever wrote, which was on the first Cindy record. And, I'm different from Mike. Like I don't just sit down to play. I usually have something that I'm thinking about or feeling, and it takes me a while for it to kind of turn into a desire to write a song. And the early Cindy sound, I mean, was really largely just necessity. I was really just learning to play guitar. Had never sang before, so that was new too. Like I said, my old housemate offered to play drums, and then this guy who I'd met once, who I then ran into because he was the cashier at the grocery store, enlisted him to play bass. And so it was kind of just like just what happened. That wasn't super intentional. Although, to be fair, I mean, I did have really strong parameters on what I wanted. So so it wasn't like a free for all.
Right.
They would object if I made it sound like that.
What were some of those parameters? What were some of those where you were trying to create a sound? What kind of blockades did you put in to kind of solidify it?
I think it's normally way more intuitive than intentional. Like I'll hear something and I'll say no
Right.
or yes. And it feels almost like a kind of nervous system response. Like that's right, that's not right. I think maybe the most common thing is play less.
Right.
But that's changed also over time with Cindy. I've become a lot more flexible and I've changed and developed. So what feels right has shifted.
Right.
Yeah, that's, Cindy just kind of developed with who was in the lineup at the time and the songs that I was coming up with at the time and who I was.
And what's it like? Like your music is so vulnerable. And you were mentioning that you came kind of late into music. Where did you find the bravery to step forward with songs and saying, I'm going to do this. I'm going to put a band together. I'm going to play in front of people. I'm going to release records. Like, it's such a vulnerable spot to be in when you're first starting off. Where is that strength? Where did you find that to say, I have to do this?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it doesn't seem like a brave thing to do. I mean, to be fair, playing shows at the beginning, I was very nervous. I still am, getting on stage. But it just kind of felt like stepping into the stream of things, and that's just what happened. I do think there was an important moment right after the first Cindy record was released. I met Mike and the other members at the time of April Magazine, and I think connecting with Mike and with them had this whole new dimension of things where I felt like, oh, there's somebody out there who understands what I'm doing and I like what they're doing. And it was the first inkling for me of like a community of musicians, which until then I had no sense of at all. My bandmates were just people who I happened to be connected to. So that changed things and has been a major part of my experience of playing music since that early, whatever it was, 2018, 19.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And Mike, what did you find in Karina's music that spoke to you the most? And that kind of led to, we got to do something together.
I remember when the first Cindy album came out, listening to it, and I thought that just the way the songs were written were very interesting. Like it was just, the approach was something that like the lyrics and the songs were just songs that I wish I had written. And, I just at the time I was working delivering weed to dispensaries in sort of Northern California, and I had a lot of time to listen to music, and I think that was probably the most listened to album during the span of my time with that company. So I got to know the songs really well and eventually learned how to play a couple of them or approximate them. Not, but and then I think that Karina writes amazing songs, and I just so I wanted to get to know her. So
right. Yeah. And when did Flowertown, like, how did Flowertown get born and come into the world? What was the happenings?
It's definitely, in some ways, a product of the COVID shutdown. My band, Tony J and Cindy, were going to play a show together, not just on the same bill, March, 23rd or something, 2020, around there, a couple years ago.
Somewhere around, yeah. But shut down.
It's not March. March 2020, the dark days of March. Yeah.
But I think in planning that show, we had this idea that our two bands could play a song together. It might be fun to like merge bands for one song. And so I think that's when we started writing a song. But it was meant to be just a song. But then that show obviously didn't happen. And I think that those first Flowertown songs got written really rapidly. It was just, obviously we didn't see each other very much those first few weeks because everyone was in hiding, but we would send voicemails or voice messages back and forth, voice memos, so I need to say, and build songs that way. And then we recorded the first bunch in a basement. And then just kept going. We just kept writing more.
Okay.
Right?
And
very accurate.
Okay. Too accurate?
That was great.
Okay. And Mike, what's the process for Flowertown? How do you guys get songs going? And like, what's the go between? How do they start, and how do they eventually get on tape?
I think it starts with one of us having an idea, and yeah, I mean, I don't know how Karina differentiates between like writing stuff for Flowertown and Cindy, but I know for me, like there have been songs that I've started writing thinking that Tony J would end up playing it, but then but then that didn't happen, and then it ended up as a Flowertown song, or vice versa. So I think it's just like the feeling that I get from things as I work on an idea. But I'd say Flowertown is probably a little more intentional for me in terms of the way that I write things. I think that having to work with another person that is not inside my own head forces me to think about structure and chords and be able to communicate that to another person who then has equal power to revise things and back and forth until something feels sort of done enough to record. So not so much like when I'm doing it alone where I just press record and figure it out on the fly. I think that working with Karina forces me to try harder to be a better songwriter.
Right. Does Karina put up parameters for Flowertown as well?
She's very good at saying no, but also very encouraging. I think I just think of examples of like silly examples of like when we were working on the first like album or cover art or whatever. I thought it would be funny to punk style put X's in between all of the letters with the word Flowertown. Now it's just a joke. It started out as something serious. I think we should to say no to that.
Right. And the latest record that you guys just put out, I mean, again, sensational. Tourist Language came out February of this year. How did that come to be? And has your sound shifted over time? So you guys have a couple records now, like some EPs, like you've been recording together for a while. How have you found that the sound might have shifted over time or not?
Well, I mean, I've certainly been influenced by sometimes he'll start a song and send it to me. Sometimes I'll start a song and send it to him. And it goes back and forth until it's, ready. But I can definitely tell that in my own songwriting, I've been influenced by that process. So like hearing what Mike does with my original structure, my original song parts that he then turns into something else for Flowertown, has changed the way I write songs. So, I think Mike and I have pretty similar aesthetics in a lot of ways, and so it's not like a clash of cultures or something. I think that it goes together pretty well anyway. But in subtle ways, I can hear how doing Flowertown and I've learned so much. I mean, doing it. I too have a Fort Drive now, and
Nice.
that Mike taught me how to use, and just the way I play and the way I think about songs has definitely been influenced by doing Flowertown. So I'm sure that over time, the Flowertown songs have worn that out.
Right.
It's accurate. In terms of like maybe the sonic quality of things, I think for the first batch of songs, I think we were just, some of it was accidental, just in terms of the way it sounded. But both of I think that like when I record on my own, I have a certain way of doing things that it just become automatic. That I like mic placement or just settings for like, the different instruments in terms of the EQ or whatever. But having another person to check quality with was good because I think it helped pull things away from either of us making it sound like too much like our other projects. And then I think Time Trials, the second one, we had gotten a bit more comfortable writing songs together and recording together. And I think you can hear it is slightly more hi-fi than the first batch of songs. And then Half Yesterday was even, I mean, it's still lo-fi, but like incrementally more hi-fi,
Right.
but almost too hi-fi for my liking. So I think the first language, I liked that we kind of brought it back into the fuzzier realm-ish,
Right.
blurrier realm.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, I mean, people often think that playing slow, subtle, it sounds so easy. But I mean, it's hard to slow down because the tendency is to propel it forward. But I love how you guys can hold that. It's almost like trying to control a wild horse a little bit because you feel that mounting tension, but you guys contain it so wonderfully. And the cleanness of the recording and the interplay of your vocals together is just dreamy. It's the kind of record you just you zone out and it just takes you somewhere else. I was mentioning to you guys, I'm out in the country and it's the perfect kind of snowy day. Everything's quiet and still. You throw that on full tilt and good things are bound to happen.
Watch the wild horses trot by.
Training them, holding them down. Because there is that intensity that you guys create. And I love what you said, Mike, about that sonic tension that is there as well. It's very well described. So again, thanks guys for joining me as we kind of bring this to a wrap. I love knowing like what's 2024 looking like for all your music. I mean, you guys have other bands, you have this band. What's coming down the pipe in 2024 for you guys?
Well, Cindy is going on tour in June. First time doing any kind of US touring. so that'll be fun. Working on some new recordings currently. Yeah, I mean, just moving along.
Cool.
Okay.
Cool. And continuously writing, Karina?
Yeah. It's
Excellent.
part of life these days.
Very cool. Mike, what about you? What's happening?
I've just been working on trying to wrap up the next batch of Tony J things. It's been moving along more slowly than I'm used to, but I think more getting better the more I work on them. But we'll see how it. I don't know when they'll be done. And then just a couple of shows, like one next month that Tony J is playing, and then there's like a Slumberland annual thing that happens. The Weekender show. We'll be playing that in June. And that's what it is.
Has Flowertown ever done a show together? Like, have you ever performed together under your Flowertown moniker?
Yeah.
Yep.
Short little tour a few years ago, mostly local things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have some great fellow musicians who join us when we do a live version of Flowertown. So, on the recordings, it's just me and Mike, but obviously it doesn't work live. So, we enlist some amazing friends to play with us when we play live.
Awesome. Well, people go out there and get this record. It's a really, really solid release. Tourist language. If you can get a chance to catch either Cindy or Tony J, go and do it. I recommend their music through and through. And all the best to you guys. I hope to continue seeing Flowertown records drop, and all the other cool projects that you guys do. Your sounds are unique and needed in this musical landscape that I like to occupy anyway. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Really appreciate it.
Very sweet.